Hello everyone! Welcome to our first exciting online notes. So excited. These are going to be the first blank notes in your notebook from our last day of school on Friday. They should be titled The Middle Ages and they should be yellow. Alrighty, let's dive right in. At any point, since this is a video, feel free to pause the video and catch up. Make sure we get these blanks filled in, that we are paying attention, because we are going to have a quiz on this information and a notebook check on our notebook. So make sure we are doing everything we would normally do just at home. Yes? Alrighty, so we're moving into a new time period called the Middle Ages. And the Middle Ages is it's literally the middle. It's stuck between the time of the great Roman Empire and everything advanced that came with that. And then on the other side, it's got the Renaissance and more modern Europe, more modern countries. We don't know what the Renaissance is yet because we haven't learned about it. But the Middle Ages is this time period stuck in the middle where nothing really is moving forward. We don't have much learning going on. We don't have much inventing going on. And so we call it the Dark Ages. Yes, dark as in we're stuck in the dark. We are not moving to the light, so to speak. I like to remember that like cartoons. When a cartoon character has a little light bulb, bing, that pops up over their head, they've thought of a new idea. They've thought of something brilliant. During our dark ages, that little cartoon light bulb over our heads is dark. It's not lighting up because we're not thinking of any good ideas. Okay? So we're smashed in between the Roman Empire time of moving forward and inventing and advancing and learning, and the Renaissance, which, again, you don't know, but we'll be moving forward and advancing and learning. On the Middle Ages, we just are just trying to survive, just trying to make it work. Okay. The beginning of the Middle Ages is marked as the end of the Western Roman Empire, and the official date for this is 476 AD. This is the official surrender of Rome to those Germanic invaders that had been bothering them for years. The Western Roman Empire ends. This is what we mark as the beginning of the Middle Ages. Now, just because the Western Roman Empire, the actual government, is gone, that doesn't mean that the church goes away as well. In fact, the opposite happens. Even though the Western Roman Empire disappears, the Roman Catholic Church and Christianity as a whole continues to survive and, in fact, thrive. The Roman Catholic Church takes on the role of a government, even though it's a church. It's kind of an interesting component there. Got some very fancy. Look at that hat. Oh, I'm going to see if I can find a hat like that. Wear that hat to school. With the government gone, we don't have an official military, a government paid for and organized military in order to protect people. But we still have people invading tribes, causing war, causing battles. Invaders started to take over large towns and steal and pillage and set things on fire and generally evil activities. So people moved to the countryside to escape. They moved out of cities to what we call rural areas. R-U-R-A-L, rural areas. Because they're moving out of these cities, away from centers of trade and business, it was less likely that they would be attacked by invaders. We have a very vicious looking invader here with his pantaloons and his moccasins and a dress. But this was actually very serious. Like I said, large centers where there's a lot of money and there's a lot of goods to be stolen, drew the attention of invaders. And so people obviously left them because they didn't want to get hurt, they didn't want their things to be stolen. And so they moved out of cities into the countryside, into wide open spaces to avoid drawing attention to themselves from the invaders. The Germanic tribes start to really become powerful at this time period. They start to take the place of Rome as the dominant power of Europe, but not for very long. They use this power to set up like mini kingdoms. When I think of a kingdom, I think of a quite large country, and that's not what these were. These Germanic mini kingdoms were very similar in a way to our Greek city-states. A town, maybe two, and the area around it. Controlled by a king, all the same structure of a kingdom, but on a much smaller scale, at least in the beginning. And one of these kingdoms was the Franks. That sounds a lot like France. One of their very famous kings, kind of the earliest important king, his name was Clovis. Kind of an interesting name there. Clovis. He ends up conquering with his army much of modern day France. Franks. Wow. Remember that this area had been called Gaul by the Romans. Once the Franks take over, it earns its name France, as it is called today. Clovis also converts to Christianity. Okay, he converts away from probably some sort of mythology that the early Germanic tribes used. He converts to Christianity. He becomes a Christian. And this is important because this makes the Pope in Rome impressed with Clovis. They become pals. They become friends because of their shared religion. And this will become important later as Clovis's followers or later kings of the Franks get called upon by the Pope. So remember this point here, that they'll check back up on the Pope. And there he is, looking very, I don't know, beardy. Now, we can't forget about the Islamic Empire. The Islamic Empire has not gone away. In fact, it is strengthening and strengthening. The Islamic Empire starts to expand into the continent of Europe. Up until this point, it had pretty much been in the Middle East, a little bit of Africa, starting to work its way into Asia, and it is now coming into Europe. They'd already pretty much spread into Spain. Okay, today that's what we call the Iberian Peninsula. It's made up of Spain and Portugal. And the Islamic army starts to spread out of the Iberian Peninsula, up north out of Spain, and tries to spread into mainland Europe. Well, they meet a problem. The Frankish army. Remember the religion of the Frankish kingdoms. Clovis converted to Christianity. So his Frankish army are also going to follow suit and become Christian. So we now have an Islamic army versus a Frankish army, and they meet in this Gaul area, right? They haven't officially called it France, yet, but we know it to be France. This is what we call the Battle of Tours. If I move my cursor down here, it's going to cover it up for a minute. Battle of Tours. Tours, it's a city in France, or what they would consider a city, I suppose. This is huge. This is the battle royale. We've got our strong, advanced, united Islamic army versus our strong, advanced, united Frankish army, Christians. And this is such a pivotal moment in history. This Battle of Tours literally has the potential to change the world's religion. Truly. The leader of the Franks at the time of the Battle of Tours is a man by the name of Charles Martel. Okay, for some reason, these early Frankish kingdoms, they have a lot of C guys. The names start with C, a lot of Charles. Okay, that helps us at least remember Christian. Charles Martel with this dope nickname, Charles the Hammer. I want you guys to start calling me Miss Dodge the Hammer. That is such a cool nickname. Charles Martel, Charles the Hammer, leads the Frankish Christian army in the Battle of Tours. And his army is able to overcome and defeat the Islamic army. So the winners are the Christian Frankish army under Charles the Hammer. Christians see this as a sign that God is on their side. They think, oh, we must have the right religion. That kind of sets them up for centuries of thinking that Christianity is the, quote, correct religion. You can't see me right now, but I'm doing air quotes, right? The correct religion. I think the other world religions might have something to say on that point. But this battle, this battle of Tours is so critical because if you really think about it, the Christian army wins this battle. That we can draw a straight line between the Christians winning this battle and Europe being predominantly Christian today. If we think about it and put on our alternate history cap, if the Islamic army had won this battle, it's very likely that Europe would have entirely converted to Islam, that Islam would have continued to spread, converting people to Islam, and that Europe would be an Islamic country. Well, think about North and South America. These countries on the American continent started as colonies from Europe. If those countries had been Islamic countries, the colonies they set up here in the Americas would have been Islamic colonies. So it's very likely that if this battle had been an Islamic victory, that a large or larger portion of the world would have been Muslim. It's an incredible pivotal moment that we can point to this specific moment and see so much change possible depending on the outcome. But as it were, the Christians are victors of this battle. Charles the Hammer leads the Christian Franks to victory at the Battle of Tours. What an intense looking battle we have going on here. Okay. Again, some more C names. Charles Martel, his grandson, Charles I, eventually becomes king of the Franks. Remember that passing power down, right? His grandson. So Charles Martel's son becomes king. Then this guy, his son, becomes King Charles I. Okay, that is hereditary power, passing power through family. Charles Martel, his grandson Charles I, becomes king of the Franks. And he does a good job. He strengthens the kingdom. He expands the kingdom, gains more territory. Here he is with his good Christian symbols. Yes, okay, good Christian symbols. We see crosses. This is up here. This is a fleur de lis. Fleur de lis. That is a very French symbol even to this day. Anyway, Charles I makes friends with the Pope. Remember, I said that was important, right? These Franks are these good Christian Franks, so they're friends with the Pope. The Pope decides to anoint or christen him, Charles I, the Holy Roman Emperor, on Christmas Day in the year 800. Now, let me tell you something about the title Holy Roman Emperor. It is essentially meaningless. It's not really holy. It's only holy because the Pope said so. It's not Rome. And he's not really an emperor because they don't really have a lot of land going on. So, kind of a meaningless title, but still calling kind of ties there with the Pope. He earns a cool nickname, and you might have heard his nickname. After he becomes the Holy Roman Emperor, he is now called Charlemagne. And I'm saying this word all the way down at the bottom. I can't point to it with my cursor because the little toolbar will pop up over it. Yes, like that. Okay, but that's how I'm pronouncing this. Charlemagne. Charlemagne. And it is a mangling of French words for Charles the Magnificent or Charles the Great. Charlemagne. Charlemagne. Yes, there he is, looking all fancy, riding his robes and his crown. Charlemagne, Holy Roman Emperor. Charlemagne is one of, if not the most famous Frankish king. He sends missionaries throughout Europe to spread Christianity. So we're continuing that spread of Christianity to all places around Europe. And these missionaries not only carry Christianity with them, but they carry the Latin alphabet to the Germanic tribes. And we talked about that when we talked about the Byzantine. English, while it is not a Romance language, while the language of English is not directly connected to Latin, we do use the Latin alphabet, and it is exactly because of this point that we do. Okay? German, Old German, is not a Romance language either. English is a branch of Old German, and then it turns to Old English, and then it turns to not so Old English, and then it turns to Modern English. But the reason that we have the same alphabet as the Romance languages is because of this exact idea. Charlemagne sends missionaries and the Latin language and the Latin alphabet to Germanic tribes. The Germanic tribes blend that alphabet with their spoken language, and then blah, 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 blah. And now we speak English today with a Latin-based alphabet. He continues to fight off Muslims, maintaining Christian Europe, keeping Muslims in Northern Africa, a little bit into Spain. We'll get there at the end of the year, and Asia as well. He also does this like weird little thing. It doesn't really matter too much, but he fights off a group of people called the Magyars. The Magyars. These guys are from Hungary. We won't talk about them a ton because they're kind of boring, but I want you to at least recognize this name. At least kind of go, oh, I think I heard that somewhere. The Magyars, and they're from Hungary, which is like southeastern Europe. I can't tell if these are pants or a skirt. I think it might be pants. It's like really loose pants. Anyway, so the Franks basically become a dominating force. So it was Rome, and then it was the Germans, and now it's the Franks. And truly under Charlemagne as well. There he is again. They are pretty dominant in most of Western Europe, and the power of the church begins to take over political life. So it had been really just the church. Now we're kind of blending the Franks with the church. And it's a weird mixture. We don't really see much of this anymore, at least here in the United States. And we have a huge kind of building project to connect Europe. We build churches, we build roads, we build schools. All of these really focused on Christian elements. So obviously churches are going to be Christian, and schools are very focused on their religion. And this helped connect all of the Christian empire together here in Europe. All right. This is your exit ticket now, right? This is going to go on the left side of these yellow notes. You guys know the drill. Okay, we have 3 of our Frankish kings here. Oops. Charlemagne, Clovis, and Charles the Hammer. All right, your exit ticket for today, for these set of notes, is I'd like you to put them in order from best to worst. So who is the best guy out of these? Who is the second best? And then who's only okay? Who is the third best? And I'd like you to explain each of your choices. So I'll give you an example. Number 1, I think Charlemagne is most important because he was friends with the Pope. Number 2, I think Charles the Hammer is second important because he's got a really cool nickname and he defeated the Muslims. Number 3, I think Clovis is third best because he only converted to Christianity. Right? Don't use my examples. That was just to help you understand with this assignment, yes? Wonderful. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you made it this far, you're a rock star. And stay tuned for more exciting videos from me about history.